Okay, good morning. I see from Lily that you can see and hear me. So then I assume I can start. So good morning. My name is Julie Arts, and I work for the Presencing Institute. I am calling you more or less from the future. I am in New Zealand, and it's tomorrow morning for you, 9 a.m. So I'm in a holiday, but I'm really happy to with the U.Lab and with all of you and to bring my case. There's even Marlies is also online, and she is my colleague in this project. Actually, in some kind of old way of thinking, you could say she's the client, but she's like a colleague and a partner in this project, and she's also online, so she might also help out if you have certain questions that are more content related or that really lie in her expertise and specializations. She can answer them too. You have all found a Q&A button, so I think I have to explain that. Please let me know in the questions if there is something I can help you with, or if something is technically not working. So you have probably read the case study online, but I will try to explain a little bit more than what was explained in the document, how the process actually went from beginning to end. And I have some papers here laying next to me that I might, show you now and then. But let me start with the beginning. So there are two catchments in the Netherlands, and so a catchment, to explain, is like a water basin, like the whole river and all the smaller rivers that are of governance in the Netherlands, and it's called a catchment. And so two catchments in the Netherlands have joined forces and have connected in innovation. So it's 4 innovation managers that have come together for every week or every 2 weeks for a certain time, exploring what it means to do innovation in the world of water, because it's a scientific world, it's a technical world, but it's also very much a social world. And often with the problems we're facing with water quality, it's easier to find a technical solution or do scientific research than the whole social innovation that comes with it, which is that, like, how do you bring awareness or shift the relationship of everyone with the water quality, with the commons, with our health, and so on. And so they came across TerraU 2 years ago already, or maybe even longer, and started exploring that. Just reading about it, but I also worked with someone who let them experience what TerraU was about. And they liked it. And so that's when I came into the picture. I knew one of them, one of the 4 innovation managers, quite well. And he invited me into the circle to now really start applying TerraU in the water world, let's say. Exploring what it was about. It was really like, what can we now do to apply this? And in the beginning, we thought about calling a stakeholder meeting. So, which is, if you know the matrix of economical evolution, for example, from Otto's work, it would be a 3.0 initiative. It's like, bring all the stakeholders in the chain together and let's talk about water quality and what we all can do to make sure we have good quality as input and as our output. So we talked about bringing together business and agriculture and so on. But just sitting together in meetings and having conversations, we started to be very intrigued by that 4.0. And where it said it's about co-creation, it's about creating a new relationship with our commons, it's about entrepreneurship. And so we were wondering, like, the 3.0 stakeholder meeting, is that the highest potential of creating an initiative. And we started doing the sculpting. So building models, like what is it that we want to create together? And there we saw that the uniqueness of this opportunity was not stakeholder meetings as such, because they were happening. And so it's all in the country, not specifically in these catchments, but they were happening around us. But it was like, how can we bring in a real new relations? How can we bring in innovation on a more societally level? So not only water or not only industry or agriculture, but on a more society level, and create new innovations that then other parts of society would be intrigued by. And it's only at that started to see it could apply to you, that we were going in this system right now, that we could, we could look at. And that's how we came across the question about medicine, the residue of medicine in water. And I like this sequence of events. So it was not, there is a problem and we need to have a solution. It was more like, we are developing a vision on how we can relate with water and the commons. And then the question came along. And we said, okay, let's apply this vision and explore this vision within this question. Then we started to do a lot of interviews in the system. Like, it's a very complicated and complex system. So we have there is a political aspect, there is a scientific dimension to it, governance is part of it, agriculture is part of it, the whole healthcare system is part of it, doctors, insurances. It's that the moment we started mapping out all the stakeholders in this system, it was as if we had a microcosmos of the whole society. And that can be overwhelming when you start looking at, okay, let's invite everyone around a table. It's pretty difficult. So it's like as if it was of a global problem, also of a national problem, and we try to develop a prototype in a local context. And in those interviews, those were very interesting. We had interviews with people from hospitals, from the pharma industry, from the healthcare industry, with doctors, nurses, people from the water catchments, from the water boards, from the water clearing. And we just started to see, like, how is the awareness about this problem? And it was a bit surprising in a negative way that there's very little awareness about what is going on. So maybe I can give a little bit of context on the content. If we are now in the Western society taking a lot of medicine, and the medicine is built in a way that it is very, very effective, and it's so effective that the medicine that comes into our bodies also leaves our bodies through our urine. And it's still quite strong the moment it leaves our bodies, and it goes into the water system. It's cleaned, and then it goes back into the drinking water. But the cleaning system at this moment don't clean everything. They cannot clean everything, also because there's always new molecules being developed and new. So it's not the current way of clearing doesn't clear it all. So what you see is that there is now in our surface water, in our groundwater, in our drinking water, there are small amounts of medicine left. There's no proof right now that it has a huge impact on human health, but there is proof that there is impact on organisms, like plants and algae, but also on animals like fish. We can also already see, for example, the hormones make that fish change sex. A lot of antibiotics are creating resistance to antibiotics. The algae are changing their process of photosynthesis. So those are all little signals that if we do not act on this, that this problem might become bigger. So people are aware of it on a political level, that this is an issue. But in our interviews, when we go to individuals in hospitals, with a doctor, with a specialist, with a caretaker in a hospice or in a hospital, we notice that people are not aware of it. Also, individuals are not really aware of what happens to the medicine that we take. And so that's a little bit the context on the content level. And what we did is take this poster. I'll show you this one. So let me see. Right, so I think it's familiar to you, but I'm showing it because it became kind of the blueprint of our process. And so if we take the four levels of intervention to change, you see that towards this problem you have the quick fixes, which is individual reactions, like creating pee bags in hospital. So there's one hospital in the region that says, okay, we're going to use pee bags for our patients that are having very heavy medication or that having chemotherapy. So in that way, they contribute to solving the problem by having less medicine in our water system. Another is the second level we design is we need new regulations, new laws, new agreements, new norms within the society. So it's very important that there will be, on a European level mainly, and a national level as well, some new regulations around what are the medicines that we are prescribing, what are the criteria. So if there would become a law about the criteria about medicine, like if you produce it, then it should have a certain quality that it dissolves in the body and doesn't come entirely out of the body. So, or in production, but also for doctors and for, I'll hold it for a while. So there is need for regulations, but the regulations are not within our sphere of influence, of action. So that is within our sphere of influence by bringing it on the agenda, by creating awareness, by bringing it in on the agenda. But it's not that we can do the new laws. So then there is the third level where you say we need to reframe. Yeah, it's like we need to look at our assumptions and our questions. Let's take a step back. What is our relationship with the system, with the question, with the problem, with the solution? And process-wise, that's the 3.0 approach, where you bring stakeholders together. And then you have 4.0. Yeah. So now I will bring in this one. It's also probably familiar to you. It was brought in the U.Lab, but it's also in the book. It's the matrix of economical evolution. Yeah, and there you have the 4.0 level. That is something that I might refer to as well. And we were looking at what would be a level 4 process or approach or vision without being polarizing between all of them, because you need all of them. But what would that look like? And what we started to see is it starts at a root level of how we live together in our society. And so we very quickly came on to how is our relationship with our health? How do we relate to being sick? Can we be sick? Can we take time to heal? Can we, do we see that becoming sick has also a purpose in creating an immune system, sorry. And so that was the questions that were coming, and that we said, let's look at those. But it's all of them are important. So that's something also that I wanted to stress. It's like, you can't say level, the quick fixes and the redesign are less necessary or less than a level 4 approach. So that's why we came up with creating a gathering. We invited, I think, 35 people in an old convent. It's a beautiful place. It's like a very calm place in the middle of nature, and where we looked at those 4 levels, and we started to call them 4 transition paths. So one transition path was quick fixes, like one thing, one stakeholder doing one intervention that is contributing to a better quality of water. You had the transition part of regulation. You had the transition part of bringing stakeholders together. And you had the transition part, the 4th transition part was about starting a dialogue and a conversation on our relationship with our commons and with our health. And we literally put 4 flip charts in the room and let people explore each of them, saying, what is the importance of this transition path? What is the advantage and what is a disadvantage? What would we not be able to solve by doing this, by taking only this transition path? And then we asked people, where does your passion lie? And where does your sphere of influence lies? If we would continue this process. And so we saw that there were at that moment 3 groups. So we had people in the corner of the level 1, which is quick fixes and doing working on very unique solutions for unique partners. And there was no one at the regulation, which was because it doesn't lie in our sphere of influence. And then there was a group that was around the stakeholder process, and one group that we started to call level 4. And our group decided to take space and to come together for a couple of months, once a month or once every 6 weeks. We're just seeing how it goes, and to just slow down and look at those questions about our health and our commons. And so the first meeting with the 4 flip chart was the end of October. And then we came together with the level 4 group, as we still call ourselves right now, in December and in January. And there are small circles around 8 to 10 people. And it starts with a deep reflection about our own relationship with health, with sickness. So we look around, but we notice in ourselves that if we're sick, we're trying to take medicine to be at least back to work within 24 hours, or as quick as possible, get back to work. And the same for the parents in our group. So I don't have children myself. So in our group said, well, I noticed that I'm doing that with the children as well. If they're sick, to give medicine and hope that they get better as soon as possible to go back to school or to be better. And so there is something there to look at and to start a conversation at that level, next to all the other solutions about clearing the water, introducing PBACs, having regulations about production and so on. They're all very important, but in the end, they are solutions on the symptom level, and they're not addressing the root cause of the problem. So, because even if we would, clear the water in the 2 catchments that we're talking about, so that's one area in the south of the Netherlands, if all the medicine would be cleared out of the water, so they could create new technologies and new institutions to do so, which are huge investments in time and money, then it would still be a problem, because the river coming in from Belgium and Germany, that would not have changed. The relationship, the relationship with our health would not have changed. And maybe in a couple of years, we develop a new kind of medicine. And those institutions that we build right now are not able to catch those molecules out of the water, and we would have the same problem. So we felt it was really important to work on those different levels. And what we started to do in those level 4 conversations is to also sculpt in 3D. So use the material that you use for prototyping, but to build first like a system. So we explored in our interviews and in our conversations what the current system is like in the periphery, at the periphery, in the center of the system, with all different stakeholders. What is it that they have to gain, what they have to win, what they have to lose, especially. How could we invite them into the conversation? What would make it meaningful? The insurances, for the pharma, for the academia, for the governments, for other countries to step into this conversation. And then we started to build, like, what would be a desired future? A desired future in which is not all problems are solved, but it's like, what is a desired future where you see there is a kind of cohesion and a relationship and a new way of living together, where a lot of the symptoms would just dissolve because there is a different way in which we look at life, at each other, at ourselves. And that was a wonderful exercise. And what could you see? Maybe to just throw in a little bit of the ingredients, is that there was a lot about finding community living. Creating spaces where people from really diverse people live together and create small communities with each other. That was one thing. There was also stories, they are already happening right now, but where it became more mainstream, where you have places where you proactively look at our health and at our relationship with ourselves. That would, I don't really know, how would I say that? That would create a different relationship with our bodies. So there was self-awareness, body awareness, learning to have physical intelligence, body intelligence, all bringing that all back and integrating that in our daily lives and learning how to do that. Some of the illnesses or physical or health problems would be dissolved. Also place for meeting with each other. So where people come together and people with different questions and people help each other. So because what we noticed in our interviews is, for example, and they are remarkable numbers, big hospitals versus a very small facility where they have time for conversation. People take less medicine than in big hospitals, a lot less. So, or we, in our last meeting, we had someone who was working in a hospice and said, there was also a small institution. And he said, well, sometimes in the middle of the night, I could give someone medicine against fear or anxiety, or I could give a foot massage. And it was not necessary this night, but even not the nights after that. So how do we bring in back connection, contact, time, attention, intention, in order to avoid some medical and health problems? Some of the patterns we have developed to take medicine as a solution, to let's get it over with. Let's have the symptom out of the way as soon as possible so that we feel better. And so those were ingredients bringing people together in taking care of each other, so people who have needs, but that it's not like we have this house for people with autism and this house for people with a physical disability, this house for people with an illness. It's like, if people have a need, why don't we bring them together in a way that they are there? and community living. So those were ingredients that we saw surfacing in the models that we created by building them in 3D. And the last conversation was in the end of January, where we started to look at prototypes, but prototypes not in the sense of we're at the end of the right side, or already in the right side of the U, but it's like developing little ideas, like what would be steps that could take us from now to that future system. And we might create those prototypes time after time, but it's just by trying to imagine what that could look like. It's as if you start moving from the current system to the future system, step by step. And if I look at the prototypes that came up in the last gathering of the level 4, so I want to stress that it's the level 4 group that is specifically looking on a societal cause level, that it's like, how can we involve education? So we might meet next and invite children into our conversation, by letting them experience something around this. Another was, let's work with music. There were beautiful stories that someone brought in from Venezuela, where they, with music, created cohesion in society and between communities. It's also doing some conversation pharmaceutical sector and going into real deep realistic conversation in what does it take for you to find this conversation, not like a necessity or because you're part of a problem, but completely the other way around. Twist that around and say, what would make this really interesting also for your own future and innovation of the sector? So those will also be conversations that are going to happen quite soon. We're starting to have some really good connections within the sector. So those were little ideas, and I think they will all take time, but people are gathering around them and they will experiment with them, and then we come together again. I think it will be end of March. Another beautiful one actually was also, let's explore what the connection is between mindfulness, awareness practice, meditation, attention and intention, and the quality of water. It's just starting to experiment. Really do. Now I have to be careful of my words here. It's not about doing. Could we influence or contribute to the health of water by collectively meditating or having very collective awareness on the quality of water? It's a question that might sound totally weird to some, very natural to others, but I'm very happy that it just comes up. We have to look at business models, we have to look at a win-win for the pharma, and we are going to experiment with children and education, and we're going to learn and try out how meditation with water quality, what the relationship is between them. So it's very, very diverse. And I think that's a little bit where we are right now with the level 4 group. So, but the other group, the bigger group that came together in the end of October, will meet again too in May. And there we will see like whatever happened in all the different transition paths. And we're still in contact with them. And it's we're now going to see if you open up and create space for conversation, for diversity in approaches, in diversity in opinions. So some people say that, believe that regulations is the only solution or the best solution. And that's fine, that's very fine. So it's like the diversity in opinions, in perspectives, in influence, bringing them back together. We didn't organize it, we didn't follow up closely. So we're very curious to see what happened in by bringing people together, open up the conversation, and then let's enable the self-organization. So we'll see in May probably what has happened and how much guidance is necessary in the future, or where does the energy goes? The energy and the passion goes, and that combined with the sphere of influence of the whole group. So I think it's a little bit, yeah, that's in short where we are in the process. And if I look at the material that I have next to me, I think maybe there another nice one that I can see that Marlies was very much involved in, who is part of the call as well, is that she created this poster. It's in Dutch, so I can share it afterwards, but it's written in Dutch. But it's an infographics that she created with someone who is doing research, and it's to give data, because we also noticed that there is a lack of awareness, but there's also a lack of data. Just some people just need data. So I had a conversation with a very short one with Subhana Saxena, who is the CEO of CIPLA. So I think it was Otto read the letter in the first live session, I think, of the former CEO of CIPLA. And I just explained our question. I said, you know, what is it that you need from your perspective as a CEO of a pharmaceutical sector company in order to feel intrigued by this question and feel invited for your own well-being as well as the well-being of everyone? And one of the first things was, I need data. What are we talking about? How much is it? What molecules is it? When do they come into the water? And so this is what we created at Infographics. So Marlies with a researcher and some other colleagues, to just be able in one pager go to stakeholders and say, this is going on. So those are the I don't know the word in English, but those are the different ingredients or bad residues of the medicine that we still find in the water, and how much it is, and how much is used, how much medicine you use, how much money is going on. So in what water, and how do they get into the water? How do they get out in the water? What would it ask? So just data, and collecting it from the moment of development of medicine to consumption of medicine to the moment it goes into the environment. And that is helpful to start the conversation with everyone. So let me pause here for a second, and I'm gonna see whether some questions have come up that I can respond to. So placing the poster is, unfortunately, I don't have any tape. I'm in the house of the parents of friends, and I don't know where anything is. So I can't post the poster somewhere, sorry. How did you identify and find the people? Okay, so looking at the question, how did you identify and find the people who are now involved in the different groups working with the process? I think so. The 5 of us were sitting in the room, and of course, both of, so there were 2 catchments, so there's big organizations, water government, you could say, that's how I describe it. So they are very connected to their stakeholders already. And so what we started to do is map them out, just writing down. We're talking about hospitals, we're talking about insurance, we're talking about hospices, about nurses, doctors. So we had organization, people, individuals, and so trying to map out, you know, that was the moment where we were overwhelmed in the beginning, because it's a society, right? It's political level, it was Europe, it was everywhere. But we mapped it out, and then we started to look at what existing relationships do you have. So especially the 4 of them have a lot of existing relationships of former projects or people they met in innovation processes. And so it was like, let's have a conversation. or let's ask that individual who they think is the people we should talk to. And once we have a conversation, ask them, who do you think we should talk to? And so I think that's how it grew organically from the networks that we were having with the 5 of us in the room. And then there was also a step that we took after we identified those, where you kind of rationally sit down and say, who's missing? So if we look at all the personal relationships we were having, who's missing and who's a very important stakeholder that we apparently don't have in our networks yet. And then sometimes people were contacted just by phone, and then an interview followed. So everyone that present at the end of October had a conversation with. So, or an interview or a telephone, or so no one was coming in cold, let's say. They got an invitation, they accepted it, and they stepped into the room. And that is very helpful, by the way. That was really helpful, that people had some kind of context about the question, but also about how we want to approach this. So very little, but it was not like this is how it has to be, but people had some kind of feeling of, you know, I know someone there and I know what this is about. And I think that was very helpful. Which was also actually a nice idea that one of us came up with, is that the 30th of October, we built the current system. We put all the players in 3D material with Lego and Playmobil and blocks and you know all the material that is used, and we put it on a huge table in the middle of the room, and around that were all the chairs in a circle, so no table. And everyone who entered the room at the stakeholder meeting got a little Playmobil like man puppet, let's say, a Playmobil puppet. And so instead of asking who are you and just introduce yourself in words, we asked them to place their Playmobil puppet into the system and saying, I think this is where I am right now. So related to academia or research or water catchments or government or business or agriculture. So, and people could, and what it created a nice visual image of the diversity that was present in the room. So that was a nice one. Let me see. Was there any initial sponsor for this work? No. So I think it's part of the beauty of everything that happened until now, but it's also part of the challenge of the future. So what happens is that the 4 innovation managers, of which Marlies, who's present here, is one of them, they kind of are really given space in their work. So they have their work, but they have some space in time and energy and attention to look at innovation. And so they have some budgets for it, but it's not huge, I think. I don't even know them, actually. Maybe Marlies should answer this question. But it's more like they're given space, but it's also on top of all the other projects they're doing. So if I listen sometimes, they are very, very busy trying to balance all of it. And so there is some budgets for the gatherings, and there's some budgets for bringing in people. But it's not huge yet. But it created the possibility to do a slow and conscious process. There is one thing that is also going on in parallel, is that you have this board of all the catchments in the province, and they are also very aware of what we're doing and supportive. And they almost say, go and explore and experiment and learn and do what you think that needed to be done. And I think that if there is a moment that we hit this like idea that we feel like this is it, this is something that, you know, that needs that huge resources or something, that there is a possibility to go there and ask for it. But it's not yet 100% like sponsor that says, here's the budget, do what you want. So now it's just, yeah, learning and doing as we go. Okay. Am I correct that in this point of time you don't have a picture of what is happening at the various level, but only in level 4 group? No, actually. So what happened is that during the conversations, one of us was in each group, and so we are still aware of, we're still connected. I'm going to call it this way. We're still connected. And there is a LinkedIn group that is going to be created between now and a couple of weeks, where we will ask the specific groups of where are you at. But for example, one of us was in each of the groups. And so the two of us, Marlies and Joost and I, so the three of us, gathered our attention and intention for level 4. But the others were in the other groups, and they're connected, but they're not leading it. Yeah? So we have an idea. The deepest understanding is, of course, the level 4, because that's the one I'm hosting, and that I chose to be in from the center, and the rest is more like how we enable them to do something. So it's not 100% aware, but we're still connected. Is there another question? So, I see a spectrum of short-term to long-term issues. I assume the groups and people involved decide which threats get addressed. Does U.Lab keep track of the overview? Who does that post U.Lab? So I'll first take the first part. So the question about do people and groups decide which threat to get addressed? Yes, I think there is a big level of self-organizing. So what we noticed is that if you open a conversation up, you attract the people that are intrigued by the question, or that are aware of the question or the problem or the need for a different approach or the need for a solution. So that's very different than if you make someone join a meeting about a problem. It's like, it wasn't like an invitation. Do you want to be present? And because we had an interview with almost everyone, there was this awareness that came up within that interview. So people choose to join and choose to be present. And we created the possibility to join one of the transition paths that has your passion and sphere of influence. But we did not do any control about, is everyone doing something? Some people might just have been part of the conversation and they might let go, or it might be, have planted a seed that needs more time to flourish, and it might, ignite something for them later. And some you felt like were eager to start doing stuff. So there is a lot of self-organizing, and there's a lot of hoping that people just by themselves connect and step up. Of course, when there is a moment where we would find this prototype that has the potential for impact in social innovation and in technical innovation, and it needs huge resources, that would be a different question, because the moment you go and ask for resources, there are other decision takers coming in. So that's more than self-organizing, of course, because then we have a broader conversation. So does U.Lab keep track of the overview? So if you mean with U.Lab this online course, then there is no direct connection. I mean, so this process started a long time ago, and So Presencing Institute knows this case and this story, and I keep sharing what we're doing and how it's evolving, because it's it's interesting. I keep learning. It's part of my daily life, and it always it's very Theory and Presencing is part of most of I do, but I keep learning every day too by bringing in the story and getting feedback from colleagues. And on the other hand, this story is also quite intriguing because it has so much levels that goes to a society level, and it has a sort of complexity that is interesting. So I will always bring it in the Presencing into the conversation with my colleagues and the other way around. But there's no direct link with the U.Lab in a sense. But some of the people in our context are doing the U.Lab. That's also something that is nice, and that will help us to amplify the process afterwards. So I think I am aware of 6 of the participants in some of the processes, like any of them, that is now doing the U.Lab. And who knows what will happen? We will definitely harvest that, but that is somehow the only connection there is with the U.Lab right now. Done. I hope it's done. If you don't think the question is answered, just post it again. How are you empowering stakeholders to own the solutions? I think, how do you empower? I think what we looked at several times is in our conversations within our small group is what were the projects that worked really well, whatever the definition of success is, but also where were you really involved, that you say, like, I just want to do this. I don't have to do this because it's my job. I want to do this. So we kind of with each other shared some of those stories to see what made us in the past want to do this extra mile. And so then you see that all those stories will never involve making someone, blaming someone, shaming someone, making a difference between those who are guilty and those are the good guys. It's like it's finding that connection between the individual person, their quality and passion and sphere of influence, and the question we're dealing with, and having, enabling that they discover that and then say, this is where I can really do something because I want to, coming from a deep level. So not only from the head, it's from the heart because you really care, but even from the will because you cannot not do something, or you feel that you can do something and that the potential impact is there. And in the end, this is a beautiful question for that, because you might be involved as a stakeholder, or it's part of your job to do something. But in the end, it's our children drinking the water with the residue. So you cannot not feel connected. And so enabling people to have conversations about it without saying, this is a problem and, you're part of it, or you have to do something, or even saying like, it's your children drinking it, that having that shock effect, we're kind of avoiding that. And I think it feels, you have different steps that come before empowerment. It's feeling related, it's feeling invited, it's feeling involved and committed, and then you go to empowerment. And if that is a process that has time, then I think that is something that works. It's also really saying all the solutions are necessary. It's not about bad and good. Watching language and so on. So I think that all helps and contributes to how do you empower the stakeholders to own the solutions. Yeah. I'll look at this one. Do you know of similar or different work on comparable issues, water in relation to health and community, whether among the Processing Institute or elsewhere? There are many over the whole planet, people asking the same questions. I think the one that is very specific about medicine in water, it's a Western, it's a Western problem, right? So the amounts of medicines that we are taking and that residue going into the water, that's typically a Western problem. Just looking at the amounts of medicines we take in order to be as perfect and healthy as possible. So in other cultures, that is not yet happening or just not happening. But for example, I am learning with a project that colleagues of the Processing Institute are doing in Ethiopia around transformation of agriculture. So you could say it's very different, and yet it's also about the commons. So there you don't have the healthcare component of the medicine, but once you go to the level 4 conversation, you come onto a universal level about our relationship with the commons, our relationship with community, with each other, the social innovation about that I spoke about in the beginning, that is actually the most difficult one, whatever the content is. And there is a lot of relationship. So there I learn. I'm doing myself a project in Burundi around climate change. And so that's also about our relationship with the commons. So water quality is there and soil degradation. And so there, technically and scientifically, we're looking at other statistics. But the solution also lies in community and bringing awareness and shared awareness about taking care of the future generation and taking care of looking at other ways of living together and using our resources. So in that way, there is many going on, but very specific health, medicine in water, no, not very specifically within the Processing Institute. But for example, in the Netherlands itself, so this is where the project is, a lot of people are now looking at medicine in water. And I think it's very dangerous for me to give numbers now, but I think from my perspective, which is on the periphery, I see a lot of investment going into research and into stakeholder conversations, but not as much as taking the conversation to the root level of our relationship with health so far. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's. So again, if the answer is not complete, just add other questions. Who will continue to convene, facilitate this process when the Processing Institute's involvement is complete? How long will PI be involved in this process? Okay. So maybe I need to zoom out for a second. So there are many ways in which you can work with TRU or with the Processing Institute. So sometimes an organization or an individual calls the Processing Institute and says, I would like to work with you. And then the Processing Institute invites one of the people they're working with from the practitioner circle to do this work. Yeah? If Otto, for example, is not available, or if it's just within someone's expertise, so then one of us can pick up that question. Here it happened differently. So I was invited as an individual because I had an existing personal relationship with one of the 5, and now with all of them. And then I brought in my experience with TRU, and then the wisdom, the collective wisdom of the Processing Institute. And I brought in my story in the Processing Institute to do the collective learning. So I think it will never be complete. I think the moment that we, for one reason or another, I'm not going to think that it will be within this lifetime solved by saying, okay, check this solution. You know, the problem is out of the world. No more people are not taking medicine anymore. It's not entering in the water anymore. You know, so I don't think we'll ever say, check, this is done. But maybe this process might come to an end. And so the moment that our collaboration might end, then in a way I would step out, but doesn't mean that the U steps out. And I don't know what it means for Presence Institute. So it's very organic and very relational right now. So for now, at this moment, the biggest link between the Presence Institute and this case is me. And by talking a lot about it with my colleagues, I have a circle of colleagues around me that I can call and ask questions to when I have them. And believe me, in a complex question like this, I do them often. So I often, invite in the wisdom of my colleagues. But there's no contract or something. It's more relational. Okay. Oh, I see it's almost 10 o'clock. So we're coming to the official end of this Google Hangout, but I have nowhere to go right now, so I can stay on if someone else has a question. I would also honestly be very happy to hear all of your feedback, whatever it is. You can do that by sending an email to me, or I think you can also comment on this on the page of the Google Hangout. But I'm not entirely sure. I'm sorry, I'm not a Google Hangout expert yet. I will be. So, but I think on the page you can also paste comments, or you can send me an email at julie.arts@me.com. But I would love to continue the conversation with those of you who are interested, or just give your feedback on, which can be on the process, on the question, but also on the Hangout, whether it was helpful for you or not. And I don't think I see other questions coming in. A quick recap for those entering right now. Well, maybe this is the perfect time, since the official time is still going on. Are you still there, Paul? Then I might do that. Yeah. So for those of you joined late and you still have a little time left, I can do a little recap, which is not so easy, but so the case we're dealing with is the residue of medicine in water. That's the symptom. Yeah. So the symptom that we see in our drinking water and in our groundwater in the soil is that there is residue of medicine that stays there. Yeah, that is not being cleared. If you look at what is causing this, the first level of causes is that so the medicine goes into our bodies and it leaves our bodies again through the urine, and the existing clearing systems that water governments have right now is not accurate enough to take those out. Yeah, it would require a huge investment in time and creating new installations, like we're talking millions, to create that, to make new technologies and that are able to do that on a national level, on a local level, but in the end on a global level. So that is a little bit the first level of cause, and we just dived in deeper levels of causes. And what we saw is that if we go back and back and back, just take a step back, take a step back, take a step back, we see that the questions we need to ask is about our relationship with health, with our bodies, with sickness, with life and death, with so we took it to a certain level a deep level of conversation around the roots, the deep root causes of this symptom of medicine in water. And I think and then I explained the approach, like what are the gatherings that had took place and what was the different focus of them, who was present, how did we invite them in, and so on. But I think after that this broadcast is done, you can look at it again. It will be posted somewhere, and that will give you maybe a better overview of everything that was spoken. Okay, I don't see any other questions right now. I also see that some of us are logging off, so maybe this is a good time to say goodbye. And so please stay in touch. I'd love to hear your feedback, and we can always continue the conversation. Thank you for being here and for your good questions, and have a good day, good evening, good night, wherever you are on the planet. Bye.